the reason why I love sales so much, because it's like right there on the edge. Sales is actually very, very esoteric and very magical as far as I'm concerned. Out of everything in business, it's probably the one thing that's right there on the esoteric edge. And the best salespeople get it. Whether they call it magical or not, I don't know, but they get it.
Connect Coaching Unplugged.
Welcome everybody to Connect Unplugged podcast episode number 22. I am so excited about this guest. We have David Shephard here from the UK. David is an NLP Master Trainer, and I can't wait to share everything that David has to speak about today. We've been looking forward to this podcast for a very, very long time. In 1990, David Shephard resigned from a successful career in the City of London and chose to be educated and licensed as an achievement coach by the Centre of Achievement. People thought he was crazy, but this was the first step on the road to becoming a global expert in Neuro Linguistic Programming and one of the most highly sought after and respected master trainers in the world. He changed the game for himself, and in doing so dedicated his life to helping others change it for themselves. During the early stages of David's training, he experienced and became trained in psychodrama. He discovered the effectiveness of hypnotherapy techniques. He realized the metaphor of firewalking. He was invited to study the spiritual teachings of Hawaiian Huna, and of course, he discovered the power of NLP. In 1993, he changed his game again and became formally certified in NLP, at which time the Performance Partnership was born. Through his dedication and skill, David was certified as a Master Trainer of NLP in just 3 years, after his formal certification in NLP 2 years earlier than generally expected, joining the ranks of his mentor, Dr. Tad James, the world-renowned creator of timeline therapy, as well as Julie Silverhorn and John Overdorf. Some of the most respected NLP Master Trainers in the world. David, welcome to the Connect Unplugged podcast.
Welcome. Thanks, guys.
David,
thank you very much.
First of all, thank you for staying up late. I think it's around midnight where you are, so we really, really appreciate it.
About 5 past midnight, yeah.
Look, I'm a super fan of your work. I've watched a lot of what you do. As you know, Conor and I, we're good friends with Dr. Tad James as well. And he spoke very, very highly of you. He never really mentioned too many other people in his trainings, but one name that did get mentioned quite a lot was yours. So I've been geeking out a little bit about having you on our podcast and excited to have this conversation today. And I think I might start it by finding out a little bit about what the early days were like with Tad and what the early days were like in the NLP field, because there's a lot of us that, you know, I've been in it for 10 years now, but that still feels like a short time compared to yourself. Can you share a little bit of those stories from the early days?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I got into NLP as a result of reading Tony Robbins' book, Unlimited Power. And then I read all the, the Bandler and Grinder books, and started training. I was doing firewalk seminars. I was, all that kind of stuff, and doing corporate training. And I thought, this seems to be where I'm heading. I think I need to get formally trained in NLP. And so, there are a number of companies in the UK that were doing NLP training at that point in time. But none of them really fitted what I was looking for.
Yeah.
And I'd found 2 books, Secret of Creative Future, and Timeline Therapy and the Basis of Personality. And I went like, oh, this is it. And obviously there was details in the back of the book. So I contacted Advanced Neurodynamics, as they're called today, and wound up meeting Tad in London, actually. And we just clicked. We just immediately got a connection, and I went over to do my practitioner training in Irvine, California.
Irvine, yep.
In May 1993. and then, Master Trainers training, all that kind of stuff. And did my trainers training in May 1993 in Hawaii. And by that point in time, Ted and I had already really become pretty good friends. And I went out to coach first trainers training, May 1995 in Vancouver.
He used to do it in Vancouver.
Yeah, I did one trainers training in Vancouver in 1995.
Wow. Okay.
And I went to coach on that, which was a wild experience. And I did all the morning sessions because nobody else wanted to do them because they all wanted to have a lie-in.
Yes.
So I did those.
Yeah.
And I'd already spoken to Tad and said, look, I want to license the accelerated NLP Practitioner certification in the UK. What do I need to do? And then, as I say, I was made a master trainer in 1996.
Okay.
I've been doing trainers training in 1993.
Yeah.
And then, John Overdorf and Julie Silverthorne decided they wanted to leave, and Tad asked me if I would co-train with him.
Did they used to work with Tad in the early days?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. When I did my trainers training, they were Tad's co-trainers, both for trainers training and for Huna. And they decided they wanted to go their own way.
Yeah.
So Tad asked me if I would co-train with him on trainers training. The first one of those was 1997.
Hawaii? Irvine?
1997. Irvine.
Irvine, yeah.
And then he asked me if I would co-train with him on Huna. And so we were literally training together in California, Hawaii, and also I brought him over here to London from basically 97 to 2002.
Yep.
Wild days.
Yeah, he would talk about the London days, and your name would be I was going to say thrown around, but brought up. And he always had a smile on his face as he was talking about the London days. So I can only imagine there was some later nights at some in some establishments. But I think he always spoke so fondly of yourself, as Kallum said, but also the impact that you were having. And I think 1 year at Trainers Training London, 1 year you had about 80 students, and that was always the benchmark for a long period of time. It was always obviously working with him for a long period of time. He was always like, Connor, we got to beat the 80. We got to beat the 80. And he would use it. He would reference it in a way because he obviously had a lot of pride in the impact that he'd had in London working with you, and literally without fail, nearly every advanced training Tad would teach, your name came up in one way, shape, or form as a reference of excellence. As if you work hard, if you study, if you get out of your comfort zone in order to achieve what you want in life, you too can be at David's level. And he would always. He said he used to work for Reuters Reuters for me is a journalism newspaper, and after 9/11 happened, he would reference the story that everyone knew that 9/11 had happened, and they had accepted the fact that it had happened, and they had accepted the fact that the economy was going to go down. And he said David never accepted it, and as a result, actually did incredibly well shortly after 9/11 because he was one of the only people that didn't accept the belief that the economy was going to go down. And as a result, you seem to have found everyone who was still willing to invest in themselves and progress and realize that the future is bright. And you found those students, and they ended up being your part of your network and your members. And you would always talk about that. It was one of the staples in all the trainings.
Well, I was actually Ted and I were in Hawaii on 9/11 doing the Huna training.
Right. Yeah.
And I got a phone call early in the morning from somebody out in California. 6 o'clock in the morning, my phone goes off, and there's this person yelling down the phone, "Switch on the TV, switch on the TV, switch on the TV. We're at war. We're at war." And I'm like I'm not half asleep. I'm totally asleep. And I switch the TV on, and I see the planes fly into the Twin Towers, and I'm thinking looks like a Die Hard movie.
Yeah.
And I thought, I'm gonna have to phone Tad. Well, I mean, Tad liked his sleep. He didn't like getting up early, but I thought I've got to phone him up. So I phoned his room, and it's like, I said, Tad, switch on the TV. Dave, you fucker. It's 6 o'clock in the morning. I said, I know, switch on the TV. And he switched on the TV, and he's got like, oh, fuck. Because it was I don't know what day it would be. Well, it was a Monday, wasn't it? So it would be day 3 of Huna. And we got 100 people out in Hawaii, some of who'd got friends and family living in New York. So everybody was freaking out.
Yeah,
We couldn't go anywhere because all the planes were grounded.
Yeah.
We were together on 9/11.
Wow. How was it in the training room, actually? I was in London, actually. I was in Piccadilly Circus. I was working at Le Meridian in Piccadilly Circus. And
Oh yeah, Le Meridian, yeah.
yeah. And it, used to be in my stomping ground around there. And that was pandemonium. But in the training room, you had people who had relatives in New York. Gosh, it would have been quite an experience.
Well, people were saying, are we going to cancel training or whatever? And so I met Tad for lunch and said, look, we need to do something. We need to make an announcement. We need to do something for this because people are freaking out. And so we got on the 3 of us got on the stage. It was me in the middle. There was Tad on my right, and there was Matt, Tad's son, on the left hand side. And Tad just said, in light of what's happened today, Dave would like to say something. No warning, no nothing. Complete hospital pass. So all I did was I went like, look, with what's happened today, if you think about the intentions of the people who've done this, I just said, look, just look around the room. Just look at the faces in the room. Just look at the color of the faces in the room. Just look at where people have come from. And the people who did this today in New York don't want us to do this kind of thing. So the thing that's really important is we can't go anywhere anyway, and we keep going. And then we did a healing process for all the people in New York and all that kind of stuff. And I said, right, we're done now. We've done everything that we can do from here. Let's get on with the training. And it was just like the whole energy of the thing just
changed,
just dissipated. Yeah,
amazing. And when did you train with Tad for what, 15 years up until?
Yeah, so I first met Tad early 1993, and I was training with him until around about 2002. Then we went our separate ways, though we always remained really good and really close friends.
And you co-taught and co-trained Huna and NLP and timeline therapy. Would you say that you were one of the first timeline therapy trainers or Huna trainers that that worked with him or are still teaching the same, the same system methodology?
Yeah. So when I first started training with him, he got two other co-trainers, John Overdorf and Julie Silverthorne. But they decided to go their separate ways around about 95, 96. The size of the trainings and the number of levels of trainings that in Huna particularly, Tad just couldn't do on his own.
Yeah.
He came to me and asked me if I would do it, if I would co-train with him, which was obviously a massive honor and a privilege, even if it did scare the shit out of me.
Yeah, I could.
So yeah, as far as that's concerned, I guess, and I wish it wasn't true. I guess there's nobody been teaching or practicing timeline therapy on the planet longer than me. I say I wish that wasn't true, because I wish Tad was still around, but obviously he's not. And then from our Huna lineage, nobody's been teaching Huna for longer than me. Yeah. Which is,
Huna was I had never heard of Huna before I started working with Tad and his team. And it was an introduction, and gosh, it's a huge spiritual growth journey that someone can embark on. I think a lot of our viewers will know what NLP is. Could you unpack Huna a little bit for those who may not know what it is?
Sure. So Huna is the original spiritual, and I like to call magical practices and principles of the ancient people of Hawaii. That was the practices in Hawaii before the missionaries arrived in the early 1800s, and literally made it illegal. So Huna is very much about working with energy. It's very much, it is spiritual, but not spiritual in the way that the majority of people think of it these days as being religious.
Yeah.
It's not religious. It hasn't got the doctrine and the dogma of modern day religions. And also it's more of what I would describe as being like a spiritual science.
Okay.
So the reason why I love it, my background is in science. My background is in electronics, and in computers. So although I got an interest in things spiritual, things of a woo-woo spiritual kind of agenda really didn't work for me at all.
Sure.
And I did a morning session on my practitioner training with Tad, and he did a morning session on Huna, and he did an Hawaiian chant, and all of the hairs on my body stood on end like a cat plugged into the mains. And although I knew consciously I'd never heard this chant before, I knew what was coming next. And at that moment in time, I went, okay, I need to add Huna to my shopping list of trainings.
Yes.
NLP, timeline therapy, hypnosis, and Huna. I used my NLP training to make the money to be able to fly out to Hawaii and do my first Huna training, which I think was in March 1994.
Wow.
I've been to Hawaii about 50 times now, which I still think is really weird for this lad from Mansfield, which is a small mining town in just north of where I live now in Nottingham, to go to Hawaii 50 times and then wind up teaching Hawaiian Huna in Hawaii. It's just, I still think that's really bizarre, even today, even though it's true.
Yeah, you just pointed out something really interesting though in my mind, which is that, I have a similar story for you about how I discovered Huna and how it, became a very important part of my life. But does seem to be a tendency for people that start out in, say, personal development or professional development, leading into some sort of spiritual development. And I'm not talking about religion here. I'm actually talking about spiritual esoteric practices, whether the Western tradition or the Eastern tradition. Why is that? Why do you think that there is this natural progression towards spiritual development, spiritual growth?
Yeah. So in Huna and many of the other magical traditions, spiritual traditions, you've got the idea that we have three minds: conscious mind, unconscious mind, what we might call the higher self or the holy guardian angel or whatever it may be. And that minds are connected. The conscious mind's connected to the unconscious mind, and then the unconscious mind is connected to the higher self or the holy guardian angel or guardian parental spirit. So, and this isn't true of all NLP trainings, but certainly the way that that I was taught and the way that Tad taught it was that when you learn NLP, when you learn hypnosis, when you learn timeline therapy, you open up that connection from the conscious mind to the unconscious mind. And the route to the higher self is via the unconscious mind. Archetypically, when you float above your timeline, when you're doing timeline therapy, you activate in your neurology the archetype of the higher self. When you're floating above your timeline, you become your higher self. You become the creator of everything that's below you. And I think once that's awakened, that's when people start to get interested in more spiritual, more esoteric teachings. So I wouldn't say that it was necessarily true of all personal development, all NLP trainings, but certainly from the the lineage and the school that we're from with Tad, which obviously from an NLP point of view, from a hypnosis point of view, was very strongly rooted in Ericksonian hypnosis. Then that's what triggers that interest. Now, also people will tend to have a potential spiritual awakening between the ages of 38 and 42, which is what many of us, many people refer to as midlife crisis, right?
Is that true? Astrologically, Uranus sits from when you were born?
Yeah, is in opposition from when you were born. Yeah. Directly opposite where you were, which is when your spiritual body awakens.
Right.
And the Kundalini starts rising up the spine. There's another one between 28 and 32, which is when Saturn returns to where it was when you were born. Well, that's when I discovered NLP.
Right.
So I was 30 when I did my training with Tad, learned timeline therapy, released anger, sadness, fear, hurt, and guilt, etc. So when between 38 and 42, I didn't have a midlife crisis,
right?
Because there was nothing to come up. It was more of a spiritual awakening, which is what it's actually meant to be. But I think that's why people in our NLP lineage experience a spiritual awakening and a new interest in things of a spiritual development, and also more than a spiritual development, more an interest in what I would call magic.
Mm.
And that's not the kind of conjuring magic with card tricks. That's the real magic.
So, but I do like the topic of magic, and we'll probably ask you more about that. But I love that question, Cal, as to why is it that this evolves. Our lineage of personal growth, let's say, often evolves into a spiritual curiosity, and then therefore maybe lead to an awakening as such. You know what I've noticed over the last 20 years, because when in 2004, spirituality was very much woo-woo, and
Yeah.
it's now, even when I talk to high-performing executives, high-performing entrepreneurs, it's like they have this side of them that they don't talk about, but it's highly spiritual, yet they don't. Maybe it's a stigma, I'm not too sure, but they don't necessarily feel that they can openly talk about it. But when you bring it up, gosh, their ears prick up, and they love to have that conversation. So
Only if they're at Burning Man, they bring it up.
only if they're what?
At Burning
Man. So why do you think, did you think we're sort of on the cusp of it being okay to discuss? Or do you think it's because it's so personal to someone, it's maybe opening up a level of vulnerability that someone will only be okay to open up if they feel like it's a safe space to do that? Or any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think, obviously from, I first got into personal development in 1990. So, I've been around it for like 34 years now, which is scary. It's kind of like I've been into it for more than half my life. And then teaching it for 30 years. I think the world's changed. I think people's ideas have changed. And, if you looked at what people were searching for in the personal improvement space 5-10 years ago, it was money. People were going, how do I make more money? How do I become more wealthy? How do I become rich? If you look at what people are searching for now, it's how do I get more energy? It's like the world has chunked up because people have gone like, the more energy I've got, the more money I can make. The more energy I've got, the healthier I'll be. The more energy I've got, the better my relationships will be.
And the climbs.
Yeah, so it's like people have chunked up a level, so they're going like, okay, energy. Well, Huna is totally about energy. And how do you get more energy? How do you work with energy? So I think that's why, and I've noticed it because right from 1993, I would always run a Huna morning session on my practitioner training. And, in 1993, maybe, and it's optional, you get 50% of the people who are on the NLP training would come to the Huna morning session. Now, everybody comes to the Huna morning session. So, yes, people are significantly more open these days. I was just speaking to one of my corporate clients, as a CEO of a FTSE 100 company here in the UK, and I mentor him around presenting. And I've got a session with him in a week's time, and he said, right, what I want to focus on, because he's got this major presentation he's got to give to shareholders. He said, what I want to focus on is my energy as a presenter.
Yeah.
So
he used that language himself.
He used that language himself. Yeah.
It seems to be one of the biggest things that prevents people from staying consistent with their business as well, having enough energy to continue on. People are talking about burnout left, right, and center these days. Can you maybe riff on that a little bit more and explain to us when you talk about energy and when you talk about Huna, I guess people often want to know what that will do for them, what they will get from it. So how is more energy available to them by understanding how Huna works, and what benefits can they see from being able to tap into that?
Yeah. So Huna, a big thing for me was, in 1993, I decided that I wanted to become a professional speaker, presenter, trainer. And I then had the dawning realization that I would never get to have a bad day anymore.
Yes.
Because, I'm in front of an audience of some kind, around about 200 days a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I have been for the last 30 years. So it's like, what's that? 6,000 days, and, but you still get to have what I would describe as being a heavy gravity day, a day when you wake up and you really don't want to get out of bed. But you've got an audience that you've got to perform to, so you've got to get yourself on the core side of the equation of energy. And Huna teaches you that. How do you make more energy personally? Then also, how do you flow that energy? How do you use that energy with a one-on-one client, with an audience, whether it be 5 people, whether it be 500 or 1,000 people, and everybody's unconscious mind is aware of energy, whether they acknowledge it or are aware of it consciously. And I think, as a speaker, what people want is they want the speaker or the trainer's energy. They want that energetic connection. So from a day-to-day basis, that's what Huna. The thing I love about Huna is that you can use Huna in everything you do to improve everything you do. You can use it to improve your business. You can use it to improve your health. You can use it to improve your relationships. You can use it for improve your family connections, right across the board. It's a very hands-on, practical use of things of a more esoteric and magical basis.
I can imagine someone sitting here, listening, watching, thinking, "I'm tired. How?" And I feel like my petrol tank is only sitting at 10%.
Yeah.
Without taking supplements, which is the traditional way of increasing your energy, is having caffeine or supplements of some sort. Could you unpack for those who are probably highly curious about how it works and would love to do something like Huna, but haven't yet connected the dots, how channeling it, what is, like, where does this energy come from? If I'm sitting on 10%, where do I get this energy from?
Yeah. So, I mean, there's a number of beliefs that support the practices in Huna. In Huna, energy is called mana. But it's the same thing as chi in Tai Chi. It's the same thing as ki as in Qigong. It's the same thing as ki as in Aikido. It's the same thing as prana in pranayama. Yeah. And the ancient Hawaiians had realized there was a direct correlation between mana and the breath, the ha. So one key technique that we teach in Huna to enable people to increase their energy is ha breathing. And hard breathing, the key thing is a ratio of the in-breath and the out-breath, is that the out-breath is at least twice as long as the in-breath. So one hard breath would be like this, in through the nose and out through the mouth. And you make the out-breath as long as possible.
Okay.
Hard breathing will enable you to increase the mana that you have in your body. And though there's also the belief that the universe contains infinite energy. So what we're doing is, if we're feeling that we have a lack of energy, then we want to bring more energy into ourselves, which hard breathing will do that. We'll breathe in the energy from the universe and then store it in our body. And 7 minutes of hard breathing will completely transform your experience of energy in your life.
Yeah.
Then, there's the state that we're in from an NLP point of view. Are we in a calm, balanced, and centered state? The majority of people these days aren't in a calm, balanced, and centered state. We've got an increasing amount of anxiety, stress, etc. And then there's a technique in Huna, which is called hakalau, which is the difference in the way that we use our vision.
Yep.
So whether we're in foveal vision, as in tunnel vision, or whether we're in peripheral vision. Peripheral vision will enable us to go into the state of hakalau, which switches our nervous system into parasympathetic nervous arousal.
Yeah.
Relaxation. Whereas foveal vision switches into sympathetic nervous arousal, stress response. The key thing, I think, which has changed the world as far as the way people experience this, is these things.
Yes.
These things put people into foveal vision and sympathetic nervous arousal, the stress response. Whereas hakalau is in peripheral vision. Now, we can actually use these things and be in peripheral vision. I was talking about this this week on our trainers training. I think we're the only animals on the planet that go into foveal vision. I think it's completely learned. Because, from a purely animalistic point of view, being in foveal vision, we would be extinct.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
We've got to be in peripheral vision because we've got to see our predators in the periphery and do something about it. So I think that a foveal vision is a kind of like a recent invention, and is the primary cause of stress.
Yeah, as you're talking, my head's filled with a lot of things, but it feels like those that will live their life in foveal, it's, if you can imagine a car, if you operate only in first or second gear all the time, you're going to burn the clutch and you're going to chew through the petrol much quicker than if you're cruising in fourth or fifth gear. You're getting 10 liters every 100 kilometers, whereas when you're in first and second, it's up to 50 liters per 100 kilometers. That's more than 5 times the burn of energy, being in that state. I can get that. I can absolutely relate to that.
It's interesting too. Like I've heard you speak about hakalau. I've heard Tad speak about it for a very long time. Recently, about 12 months ago, I went and saw a Stanford University professor speak at the Opera House in Sydney, and he specialized in biology and biomechanics. And his name's Professor Andrew Huberman, and he now recommends getting into peripheral vision.
Oh, really?
He's proven it through a number of experiments that he's done. And also to amp it up, he also accompanies easy for me to say. puts it together with a breathing technique as well.
Right.
So it's fascinating to see this now come into, the zeitgeist of everything that everyone's talking about now, and it being presented as a scientific fact, when it's been taught for thousands of years by these ancient traditions.
Well, I got a what's called a neurosky. I don't know if you've seen it. It enables you to do a EEG, electroencephalogram, which is like brain activity, and I got a M wave, which enables you to do a ECG, electrocardiogram. And I wired myself up to both of these things. I mean, I'm a geek,
Professor,
self-confessed geek. So I've got my neurosky on my head. I've got my with clips on my ears and all this kind of stuff. And they say it takes weeks, if not months, of training to be able to reach an alpha state or a theta state in your brainwave activity, and also to achieve a good rate of heart rate variability from an ECG point of view. And I thought, I don't believe that. I think I can go straight into those states by going into hakalau and ha breathing, and 20 seconds I'm there. I'm into the low alpha theta state. I'm into green on the M wave, just by doing those two techniques. And you can't fool electronics. I mean, I'm an electronics engineer. I know. That's the way it works. And you're quite right. It's been it's been known for thousands of years, and we're kind of like rediscovering it, rather than inventing it, if that makes sense.
When hypnosis, the word hypnotherapy back in 2004, when I sort of was introduced to this world, it was quite taboo, and people were still, that's that mind stuff, control over people. And fast forward 20 odd years, and it's quite accepted now. I think the demystification of it has happened, and people understand that it's a do with, and if you want to follow the instructions, you can, and it's completely up to you. But the results people have had and made change in their life has put it on the somewhat mainstream map. I feel the for lack of better words, energy or spiritual side is sort of bubbling up in that direction as well. I think we'll have major influences, not TikTok influencers, but people who actually influence, like Dr. Andrew Huberman, will bring this into their conversations, and therefore it becomes accepted, I think, by the general population. And I think we'll see much more of it coming over the next few years.
That's certainly what we're finding over here. I've always found when I was training in the US that people were more open to hypnosis and hypnotherapy than here in the UK. Here in the UK, it was very much labeled with stage hypnosis. Because of one person, Paul McKenna. Had the major Saturday night TV show, where the TV show is all about having that Svengali effect and being able to get people to do things against their wishes.
Yes.
Which, as we know, is not actually true. But one of my other businesses, Fix My Mind, is a hypnotherapy brand. We actually do NLP and tumbling therapy and all that kind of stuff, but more people know of hypnotherapy than they know of NLP and all those kind of things. And very, very successful people now are going, okay, if I can go to see somebody that does hypnotherapy that will enable me to get rid of my anxiety, will enable me to get rid of my panic attacks, will enable me to get rid of my insomnia, etc., 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 in one session or 2 sessions, then I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
And it's a very successful brand.
Yeah, nice.
So I would say it's definitely shifting, which is a good thing.
Hey guys, Kallum and Conor here from Connect Coaching. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Unplugged podcast. We're jumping in to let you know about something really exciting, the Forever Client Matrix.
Absolutely. What we love doing is lighting people up and having them realize that their future is bright and, most importantly, making a difference in this world. So we are very excited to be able to share this with you.
If you want to turn every prospect into a forever client, then please click on the link below in the description and get instant access now to your preview of the Forever Client Matrix.
Enjoy.
We touched on it before, but it is like magic. You mentioned it. Cal talks about magic a bit. Where were you going with that line of questioning, Cal?
Look, I'm fascinated by the esoteric studies has always captivated me from a very young age because of some interest. You've talked about Kundalini experiences before. I had a few spontaneous Kundalini experiences in my life. I didn't know what was happening to me at the time. I wasn't educated on it. I was very young. And unfortunately for me, I was handed a book called Kundalini Rising, which is a book full of stories from a bunch of different people that have had these experiences. And thank God I read it because it explained a lot. But yeah, I am fascinated by magic, and not necessarily in the sleight of hand card trick type sense. It more so in the way that we can utilize our mind, utilize our you talked about the higher self, you talked about the relationship between the higher self and the conscious mind having to speak through the unconscious mind. I find that fascinating. I'd like to get into that at some stage as well. But utilizing that in a way that you can actually shift your perception in a way that seemingly the external world begins to match it. And talking about magic from that level. And this might be quite a deep topic for some of the people watching. But you only have to wake up some mornings and feel, like you said, having one of those heavy gravity days to notice that everything around you starts to reflect that type of experience back to you. And then you wake up in the morning and you're feeling great, and all of a sudden everything's flowing easily. Everything's, you're being able to articulate everything smoothly, and you're able to have a great day. And I first noticed this when I was quite young, and we were on a family vacation to one of the capital cities here in Australia. And I was with my grandmother, my father, my brother, my sister, and my mum. And I noticed that that when I was feeling bad, or I wasn't having a good time, it felt like everybody else wasn't either, and it sort of rippled out to all of that. And then reading a lot of literature and getting diving deeper into it. I see that there's actually much like NLP and Huna, there's actually steps and processes that you can follow in order to get these results. And Conor and I practice a lot of the things that a lot from the Carl Jung school of thought, where talking about perception is projection, and how you can adjust your perceptions based on how it's making you feel, how your belief systems, all that sort of stuff. Is that the type of magic you're talking about? And if it is, can you elaborate a little bit more for us?
Yeah. I mean, I've got 2 definitions of magic that I really love. One is from Arthur C. Clarke that says that magic is any sufficiently advanced technology that most people don't understand.
I love that.
If you think about it, we talked about these things.
Yeah.
100 years ago, that would be magic.
For sure.
Right.
Yeah. It would actually be what most people would consider to be a magic mirror.
Yeah.
In that you can conjure up people into your magic mirror and communicate with them. Yeah. The other, which I think just totally aligns with NLP, is Aleister Crowley's definition of magic, which was to create deliberate or volitional change in external situations, circumstances, and people by creating change inside of yourself. Which is, as you were saying, perception is projection. And, I've really seen that in action because we've done a lot of work with veterans here in the UK. And particularly veterans that haven't managed to transition effectively from military life to civilian life because of what they've experienced. And a lot of them had huge amounts of unresolved anger.
Yeah.
To the point where they believed the world was populated by people that were intent in pissing them off. Yeah. To the point where if they went to a bar and there was nobody else there, they'd still find somebody to pick a fight with. And then, you teach them timeline therapy and they let their anger go. And all of those people that were intent on making them angry disappear. Well, where did they go? Well, they weren't there in the first place. Yeah. Or you've got, a lot of them had unresolved fear. So they believed the world was a scary place. And there were people who were intent in, scaring them. And they let go of their fear with timeline therapy, and all those scary people disappear.
Yeah.
Well, where did they go? Well, they weren't there in the first place. So, I use that grab bag term of magic, the ability to change yourself and your environment through deliberate volitional change inside of yourself. NLP is magic. Hypnosis is magic. Timeline therapy is magic. Huna is magic. There's lots of different examples of what we would call magic. And, over the 30 or so years I've been teaching this and working with it, I have witnessed things that most people would describe as being a miracle. And the things I've witnessed, that they're still miraculous. I still go like, wow, that's a miracle. But by definition, it's not really a miracle because I know how it happened, which means you can repeat it. It's replicable. I'm working with a client tomorrow who's doing rheumatoid arthritis. And I've worked with many people who are doing that and experiencing those symptoms, and those symptoms have disappeared, which is meant to be impossible. So it's miraculous. But then there's a process to it. This is how you make magic happen, if you like.
Yeah, it's fascinating to be in those environments when some of those things happen, particularly even with things like hypnosis and suggestions. People having given themselves a certain suggestion their entire life, and as soon as they stop giving themselves that suggestion, physiological changes start to happen. It's quite remarkable. How do you think that these skills, because we have a lot of people that follow us that are in business, they're in sales, they're in, having some type of, they use their business for personal growth and so on. How do you see this type of work or this type of study or this type of process, as you say, integrated into someone's business development and business growth?
Well, I mean, the key thing, I think, really is that I think a lot of people like to think that their life is in silos, like you've got your business silo, you've got your relationship silo, you've got your family silo, you've got your health and fitness thing, you know, and they separate them all out. And then you get to the point where you realize that all those areas have one thing in common, which is you. I always remember, I don't know if Tad ever told you this. This was before he got into NLP, and he shared an office with somebody. And this guy sold, by telephone, cold calling, solid gold golf putters as a desk kind of like ornament.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Cold call.
Right, mate, cold calling, yeah. And Tad went into the office one day, and this guy was there with his head on the desk, not doing anything, not picking up the phone. Normally he was like, you know, calling CEOs, calling whatever. And he was like that for 2 or 3 hours. And after 2 or 3 hours, he lifted his head off the desk and started calling people. And at the end of the day, Tad said to him, look, you know, what was going on this morning? You know, you were there with your head on the desk for 2 or 3 hours. And the guy said, well, when I woke up this morning, I couldn't for the life of me imagine why anybody would want to buy a solid golf putter. So I knew there was no point phoning people up. So I had to get my own head sorted out before I picked the phone up. Because otherwise people would just go like, no, I'm not interested, or it's too expensive, or whatever it is. So, you know, you mentioned Jungian psychology, perception is projection. Sales is an absolutely brilliant area to experience perception is projection, because your prospects will give you your projections as objections. You know, and when I worked for Reuters, we were I wasn't in the news area of Reuters. News in Reuters is only 7% of their business. The biggest part of their business is financial information. And I was in trading room systems. And so we were selling multi-million pound trading floors to, you know, worldwide banks. And, you know, we'd be going along to a sales presentation in the back of the cab, and I'd say to the guys, so how do you think the presentation is going to go? And they would go, I think it'll be fine as long as they don't ask us this question. Mm-hmm. And then you do the pitch, and you go like, okay, any questions? And it's that question. I mean, you go like, are they psychic or what? You know, they ask the one question that you don't want to have. Perfect example of perception projection. So it's a reason why I love sales so much, because it's like right there on the edge. Sales is actually very, very esoteric and very magical, as far as I'm concerned. Out of everything in business, it's probably the one thing that's right there on the esoteric edge. And the best salespeople get it. Whether they call it magic or not, I don't know, but they get it.
I agree. I was, as you were saying that at the end, I was thinking of sales as a magic expression, and it has so much to do with one's internal representation and the way that someone's internal representation changes through that conversation. So I think there's a couple of things going on. There's language, and then there's internal representations, and one's ability to put that language in a certain combination that allows for a certain IR in the other person's mind, which activates something inside of them. Can you speak to that a little bit? Because that fascinates me.
Yeah, I mean, one is from a projection point of view. It's not only important; it's vital that the person who's selling something totally believes in what they're selling. To the point where I would go, really, the kind of like projection what you'd want to put out is, if they don't buy this, they're an idiot. And you don't want idiots as your customers. And so, so then if you get an objection, the natural response is like, what? Are you crazy? So that's a projection point of view. And then, starting to understand the workings of language. And, what I've come to realize over my years of NLP is that, most people think that language is a means of communication, moving information from one place to somewhere else. Whereas actual fact, language is a programming language, because people cannot not change their internal representations when you speak to them.
Yes.
So when you understand the structure of language and how your language literally restructures somebody else's internal representations, as in their thinking, then you get to the point where you can use your language deliberately, which again starts to sound like magic, creating deliberate change using your language to move the person from not knowing that they want something, not knowing that there's value in something for them, to the point where they go, there is so much value in this for me that I actually have to invest in it. Taking them from the point where they perceive something as being a cost to perceiving something as being an investment.
Mm-hmm.
And we can do all of that with our language and with our linguistics, which is, the L in NLP.
Yeah. Yeah. It's when I kind of realized that it kind of dawned on me when I was standing in front of a large group of people doing hypnosis, and realizing that I was actually, a custodian at that point in time to their focus, to their internal representations. And I needed to make sure of and manage the words that were coming out of my mouth, because everyone was in a state of trance and open to suggestion. So, there is I guess, a good and a dark side to all of this as well. So what do you think is the distinction between, people that do use it in a way that is manipulating for bad intent compared to manipulating for a positive intent or for someone's highest intent? Do you have sort of a rule, some rules around that, or how you can, because you mentioned Aleister Crowley and you mentioned people like Carl Jung, and I see those two guys kind of at opposite ends of the spectrum. So how do you kind of is there a distinction to be made there, or is it like the yin and yang, when there's a little bit of good and a little bit of bad in all of us?
I think you've already kind of like hit the nail on the head with what you said, which is about, it's all about intent. In that all of the stuff that we teach, whether it be NLP, hypnosis, timeline therapy, Huna, can be misused, can be used to manipulate somebody. And, manipulation, I would say, is like, doing something with the intent of getting somebody to do something against their beliefs and values. Whereas, my take on it, I don't know, it's your take on it too, is about empowerment, which is about creating win-win situations. And, we hear all the time about the 4 quadrants, lose, lose, win, lose, win, win, win. I actually don't think there's 4. I think there's 2. Because, if I do something and you perceive that I've won and you lost, well, we're not going to do anything again.
Yeah.
So in the long term, we both lost, right? Mm-hmm. If we do something and my perception is that you won and I lost, then I'm not going to play again, right? So in the grand scheme of things, we both lost. So really, there's lose, lose, and win, win. And so it all comes down to intention, and enabling other people to win. And when we use what we know to enable other people to win, then we win.
I love that. I mean, I'm a almost part of a swish pattern here. My camera has reduced. Interesting theory, David, with the 4 quadrants. I like that. So statistically, the likelihood of both people winning is 25% if we're using that. So the theory, I guess hypothetically, you have to work harder to make sure it's a win-win because the odds are against you to make it a win-win. You have to maybe go the extra mile or make sure that you're clean across balanced and your intentions are clean, because the likelihood of it being ultimately a lose-lose potentially is higher.
Yeah, and it's around where your focus is. I mean, I'll give you a sales example of this that I was talking about the other day. I was doing a practitioner training, and one of the lady delegates on the training came up to me and said, "I want to hire you to do an NLP sales training for all of our salespeople." She was on the board of a electronics company, and this electronics company had discovered something new, which nobody else had discovered. They'd patented it, which meant essentially they got like 2 to 3 years where they had the market completely, and nobody else would have this particular product. Nobody else could bring it out. So they got 2 or 3 years to establish this new product in the market. And she said it's going to make us absolutely hundreds of millions of pounds. So of course I said, well, yeah, of course I'll come and train your salespeople. And she said, well, how much will that cost? And I said how much it would cost and all those kind of things. And the deal was done, there and then at the front of the room in the practitioner training. But then I just had an intuition come up. And I just said to her, out of interest, how are your salespeople remunerated? How do they get paid? And she said, they're on fixed salary. So I said, well, do they get bonuses? She goes, no. I said, do they get a percentage commission? No, they're all on fixed salary. And I said to her, so I'm not going to come and do a training for you because it's not going to work.
Yeah.
And she went, what do you mean? I said, it's not going to work. I mean, you've told me this is going to increase the company's sales by 400%. But the salespeople aren't going to get paid anymore. So they're going to be missing one important thing. Why?
Mm.
And she said, well, it's okay. We'll pay you. And I said, I understand that, and it's not going to work. So, if I come in and I do the sales training for you, I already know it's not going to work. You're going to pay me, but then you're going to turn around and say, we paid David Shephard all this money to do this sales training and it didn't work. And it's not because the sales training didn't work, it's because your payments, your pay structure doesn't work. I said, so I'll come in and do the training as long as you change your pay structure. And she said, the owner of the company doesn't believe in commission or bonuses.
I've heard this. It's incredible that
And I went, it ain't going to work.
Mm.
We know from a values levels point of view, your best salespeople are values level 5.
Yeah.
They're very easy to motivate. Say, sell more, we'll pay you more.
Self-initiated.
Yeah.
Yeah. Be the top salesperson, you get a Rolex.
Yeah.
And that's the way it works. And I said I won't do it. And the money was on the table, but that's a me win.
Mm.
Perception is that they would lose, and I walked away from it.
Yeah.
Dave, I've got like banks of questions here for you, so I think we're definitely going to need to do a part 2. What I'm fascinated by though is your knowledge of Huna, particularly the fact that you've been doing it for longer than anyone out there, particularly in the traditional way that Tad has taught it. I don't know that there's anybody doing the advanced ones here in Australia anymore. And yeah, we would love, and look, this is a long shot, but we'd love it. I'd love it because I'd love to come to it. I'd love to attend your trainings, and I know you do them in Tenerife, and that would be amazing. But with a young family, it's difficult. So is there any way of dragging you down under to come to Australia and do some of these Huna trainings?
I've never been to Australia.
Oh, really?
No. Even though a lot of people in the US, everybody thinks I'm Australian.
Well, because you like Foster's.
You like Foster? That's what he said.
Foster's, because I like Foster's.
Yeah. They have it everywhere in the UK, but nowhere in Australia. I think it's hilarious.
Yeah, no, I'm not a big fan of Foster's, but I do like a nice cold beer, I must admit.
Yeah.
So I'd love to come to Australia. Obviously, it's a long way.
24 hours.
No getting around that. So yeah, I'd love to come out and do a Huna training. And then, well, if I'm coming all that way, I'll tell you something else that nobody's doing. Nobody's doing Huna trainings like me and Tad used to do.
Yeah.
I made a decision with the trainings that we do in Tenerife that I'd go old school.
Yeah. Tad started to pull back on the Huna trainings in about 2006, I think 2007.
Yeah.
But the demand was absolutely there, and the stories and what would take place at those Huna trainings were like legendary, if you will. And there were hundreds of people there.
People in the chat are going off already. There's people saying, "Count me in for a training in Australia. That would be fantastic." Would love a Huna training. That was Emma, Jeremy, and Rosemary already hot on the.
We've
doesn't look like I can back out of this now, does it?
You've said it live. So do you also do like, because a lot of people ask me this all the time, where can I do some of the more advanced esoteric trainings like I've done, which was with Tad, because obviously, as we all know, Tad passed away a few years ago.
Yeah.
Where can you do these more advanced esoteric trainings now? Do you do the esoteric trainings that he's taught, the ones where you dive into perceptionless projection on a really deep level with, the tarot, and also the astrology and numerology and those sorts of things?
Yeah. So I do a 7-day training called The Wizard's Secret, which, as you say, is like a real deep dive into really getting into perceptionist projection, and utilizing the major arcana of the tarot, numerology, astrology, and also the Kabbalistic tree of life. I limit that to 7 people. I thought at first, when I first put it together, I thought at first that I could do like 11 or 12 people. I got up to 7 people, and because I want to spend so much personal time with people, I realized I couldn't do more than 7. So we just done one of those out in Tenerife, just a couple of weeks ago, and yeah, I mean, essentially, what people do is they define where they want to be at the end of the week, and then we throw absolutely everything at it as far as them getting there by the end of the week. Whether it be NLP, timeline therapy, hypnosis, Huna, tarot, numerology, astrology, the works, and there's a number of fixed one-to-one sessions that they do with me, like numerology, and then also designing their tasking and all that kind of stuff. And then they have access to me for the entire 7 days.
Is that something you'd be interested in doing as well on the show? Because there's, again, people in the chat saying, someone even said, Emma, I think it was, that they had done the advanced esoteric training with Tad, but they're a little bit older and wiser now, would like to do it again. Is that something you'd consider doing here as well?
Well, if I'm traveling all that way, then it's probably a more efficient, effective use of my time if we did both. Because Huna level 1 is 5 days, 10 till 8 each day, and then the Wizard's Secret is 7 days, 1 till 8 each day. So if I'm traveling all that way, let's see if we can put in both.
All right, well,
back to back.
This is pretty exciting. This is awesome because, like I said, there's a big gap that has been left in the wake of Tad's passing. So,
yeah, there is. Yeah.
Let's put the feelers out.
You have an idea of when you would want to do it?
I would need to look at my schedule. I think it would be kind of like end of October, early November.
This year?
You could do
it.
Awesome.
Yeah, we could do it this year. I've already got, actually, this is an idea. I'm already training for 5 days with then I think it's 3 days of breakthrough sessions in Tokyo.
Right. So you're going to be in the Pacific.
In October. So I'm like halfway there.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if it was possible to kind of like link them up, rather than going Tokyo back to London and then back to Australia, then that, if we could organize that would probably work.
I think before we get too carried away, you talk to Sally and get the exact dates dialed in, and then we can work on putting it out. And because like I said, I'd love.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. I would love to be involved in that as well.
Like I say, I didn't realize, because I've never been to Australia, I didn't think I was known in Australia. But then, when I launched the C21NLP.com online platform, we were getting all these people from Australia saying, I've heard so much about you. And that's obviously thanks to Tad.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, whoa, okay. There's all these, and then the same thing in Japan. I was like, I was just amazed that we did an online event into Japan. It was a precursor to this thing I'm doing, and they had 1,000 people online for this event into Japan. I was just like, what? I was so amazed, but I was so humbled that like 1,000 people would show up to this online event in Japan, and then all then again all these people in Australia and
Amazing.
And there's a master trainer in New Zealand, who I'd heard of, but I'd never met.
Was that Richard?
And Bolstad, yeah. Yeah. And he uses my pigeon phobia video on his NLP training.
On his trainings. Your reputation precedes you, Dad.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So no, I'd love to.
All right. Well,
Let's
this is
keep the
exciting.
conversation going. Let's wrap this one up. Let's keep the conversation going offline though, so we can nail this down. And we can let people know. And I think maybe if we do some sort of maybe Huna webinar or something beforehand, or
Yep.
A bit of an intro. Yeah.
maybe we put on a mini training, and then get you along to talk about the advanced stuff.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you could do a Huna intro weekend or something like that, just as for people to put their toe in the water.
Yeah.
And then, if they like it, then, they can sign up for the 5-day level
That's
one.
exciting. Australia is quite large. We'll get the map out and pick a place that you would like to go.
Make sure it's on the East
host
Coast.
it there.
Make sure it's on the East Coast. Sorry, Jared.
I'm down on the south coast of New South Wales, so I'm on the southern part of the east. Cal's on the northern part of the east, so maybe we find somewhere in the middle that's warm.
Okay. Whereabouts would that be?
Gold
I'd like
Coast.
the Gold Coast. The Gold Coast is really good.
My geography of Australia is not that great.
It would be sort of where the east coast of America. Kallum's sort of up, not as far as New York, but heading in that direction. I'm down near where Jacksonville is.
Okay.
So we'll need somewhere in the middle, like your North Carolina sort of area.
Okay.
Yeah, it's somewhere in the middle. But Gold Coast is great. You can fly in international airport. It's got beautiful beaches. That time of the year, the weather's coming right. It'll be beautiful 25, 30-degree days. And there's plenty of
Nice.
places to go. And there's beautiful rainforest just behind it as well.
I mean, particularly for the Wizard's Secret, I just go like, if people are going to work on themselves so intensely and take such like a major personal leap, then it's important that they do it in a nice place.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, have a chat to Sally, and if you want any advice or guidance or anything like that, Cal
we
and
can
I
help
here,
you with.
absolutely.
We can help you with. We'd love to help you with that.
This is great. This is good. This is good. This is good.
Great stuff.
A couple of people
Brilliant.
asked for Perth, but it's going to be the East Coast, guys. Sorry.
Perth. Okay.
Perth is more relaxed.
It must be very late for you. 1:30 in the morning. Thank you so much for.
Yeah, David. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that's a pleasure. Great to see you guys.
Likewise.
Yeah, and we'll definitely have to have you back because there was so much more I'd like to ask you, and I think so much more that our audience would like to ask. So
Yeah.
love to have you
Yeah,
back.
well, have them put in their questions, and then we'll do a part 2,
Round 2. Right.
and Round two, yeah.
Yeah.
I look like I'm about to go into round two.
We'll discuss that story on the next podcast.
Nice open loop. Yeah. Brilliant. Well, sleep
But
well,
yeah.
David. Thank you very much. Big hello to Sally.
Yeah.
And,
All right. Cheers, mate.
Yeah. Looking forward to the next chapter.
Brilliant.
Hey guys, Kallum and Conor here from Connect Coaching. I hope you're enjoying this episode of the Unplugged podcast. We're jumping in to let you know about something really exciting. If you are a practitioner, a coach, or a trainer in the alternative therapy modality space, the Forever Client Matrix is something that we've modeled in the last 30 combined years, both Conor and my experience. And we've turned it into a 2-day intensive, and we want to give you a preview of that Forever Client Matrix.
Absolutely.
We want to make the bar for them to enter into that program very, very low and have them get incredible results.
I've sold about $40 million worth, and together we've sold about $100 million worth with our teams.
That's right. We believe that trust and reliability is the currency of the future. So if you want to turn every transaction to a transformational experience, if you want to turn every prospect into a forever client, then please click on the link below in the description and get instant access now to your preview of the Forever Client Matrix.
Enjoy.